BBC Sounds. Music, radio, podcasts.
Hello, I'm Alasdair Lamont. This is the Scottish Football Podcast. It's Thursday the 9th of October, and here's what's coming up.
It's a great experience, and I'm just proud of the effort. They fought really hard today. But yeah, disappointed with the goals we let in.
Disappointment for Celtic on their debut in the Women's Champions League group stage. But what positives can they take from the performance? Also,
we will be better. I guarantee you we will be better in the long term for this. But we might have to suffer now.
Guns out. Have Scotland got the muscle to compete in the Nations League with more rookies called up to the squad?
McKenzie! It's in! It comes off the underside of the bar! And Jack McKenzie scores!
And it was a big night in the Championship as Falkirk and Livingston met, but who will be happier with a point?
The Scottish Football Podcast from BBC Sports Scotland.
Well, I'm joined for this episode of the Football Podcast by the former Hibernian and Scotland player Joelle Murray. Morning to you, Joelle. How are you today?
Morning, Al. I'm good, thanks. How are you?
Good, yeah, getting there. Also joining us, Michael Grant, Scottish football correspondent for The Times. All good with you, Michael?
All good, Al. Good morning to you. Good morning to you both.
We'll soon change that. Okay, before we move on to the serious stuff. See, it's been revealed that the Ipswich defender Axel Tuanzebe will be out for a month after sustaining a freak hand injury doing the dishes. I wonder if either of you have ever injured yourself doing the chores, or what the strangest injury you've come across in football is.
Well, I'm not sure it counts as chores, but I did once kind of cut my wrist with a saw, which sounds more dramatic than it is. I've still got a little scar of about kind of quarter of an inch. And I guess the most bizarre injury, it's got to be Kirk Broadfoot and the exploding egg, is it not?
Oh yeah, that was a great tale. What about you, Joelle?
None that I can think of, to be fair. I certainly do a lot of chores, do a lot of dishes. Certainly never injured myself doing so. There's been a couple of times where I've maybe increased the speed going up the stairs or something like that and felt a little tweak, probably in the latter kind of stages of my career. But yeah, thankfully nothing like that.
Yeah, that's a weird one. I did once give myself a nasty cut trying to cut through a frozen bagel. That was pretty stupid of me. But anyway, lots to discuss with Joelle and Michael. First, let me quickly run through the latest headlines. A double by Kayleigh Van Doren meant Celtic were beaten 2-0 by the Dutch title winners 20 at New Douglas Park on their Women's Champions League debut. Falkirk moved to the top of the Championship after drawing 0-0 with visitors Livingston in front of nearly 6,000 fans. Scotland assistant coach John Carver says the national team might have to suffer in the Nations League group, but the pain will help the side in the long term as they target qualification for the 2026 World Cup. And Inverness Caledonian Thistle's board have warned fans the club is likely to go into administration next week. We'll get to the action on the pitch shortly, but Michael, what do you make of that situation at Inverness Caledonian Thistle? It's not looking great.
No, it's not, Al. I mean, that meeting on Monday night of supporters and shareholders was pretty alarming. Some of the stuff that was revealed at that was staggering, really, in terms of some of the decision making that was made at the club, and it just almost seemed unbelievable to listen to. They're in a dire strait. You know, they're talking about needing 1.6 million before the end of the season, a couple of $100,000 before a deadline they've set in about 7 days or so to avoid going into administration. And I think there is a feeling that administration might not be the worst thing for them in terms of off the field survival. Obviously, what comes with consequences in terms of docked points for this season, and it may condemn them to relegation again. But if that's the best option long term for the club, and it allows an element of clearing the debt, but it should never be seen as an easy option. Administration, it's a painful thing for a club to go through, and it probably will mean job losses. So nobody should ever dismiss that as an easy option, because it's not.
Yeah, no, it's a dreadful situation. Well, we'll have more on that story in tomorrow's podcast. Actually, we'll be joined by George Moody of the Inverness Cally Thistle Supporters Trust. We'll get into that a bit deeper. But moving on, an historic night in the Women's Champions League, Celtic becoming the first Scottish side to compete in the group stage of the competition since it was revamped. It did end in disappointment in that shape of that 2-0 victory, a 2-0 victory for 20. But Elena Sadiku said she was proud of her team's effort, Joelle. What did you make of their performance and, of course, the result?
Yeah, I think for me, I watched the game last night and I don't think Celtic were far from kind of poor. They certainly didn't disgrace themselves. When you consider the magnitude of the competition, like you said, the first Scottish side to qualify for the competition since it was introduced in 2020-21. I thought they put up a really, really good performance. Of course, 20 had the lion's share of the ball, the lion's share of kind of passes within the 90 minutes. But I don't think Celtic certainly didn't disgrace themselves. They put up a really good performance. They had their opportunities within the 90. It wasn't as if they were, or they had approached the game from a negative perspective. And yeah, I think nobody likes to get beat. However, I think they can kind of walk away from that with their heads held high.
Yeah, I mean, I obviously covered that game last night myself, and Leanne and I in commentary kind of remarked upon, you know, the levels and how much of a step up that was between, you know, playing the top end of the SWPL games against the likes of Rangers and Glasgow City. Do you think there was much in terms of playing against 20, which seemed to me to be Celtic's best opportunity to take something from that group? Did you feel that though that was a level above what they're used to?
Yeah, absolutely. I think you could see the composure that 20 were playing with. They were picking up spaces in between the Celtic lines, and like you said, I think it definitely does show the step up in class. Celtic have started the season, the SWPL, very, very well. Pretty dominant in the majority of their games domestically so far. But I think last night just showed the step up in gulf and class. However, kind of contradicting that statement, I definitely don't think they disgraced themselves. As I say, they suffered for spells, but equally so, they managed to enter the final third a few times. They had a lot of corners that they couldn't capitalise on that Caitlin Hayes usually does so domestically. So yeah, I think it showed the gulf in class. Like you said, probably the best opportunity within the group to get something. But it's a learning experience. You go through your career with many of these experiences, and I'm sure they'll learn from it and be better in the next game.
Michael, Celtic have obviously made great strides in terms of their commitment to the women's game, and as I say, that's obviously the first Scottish team to compete in the group stage of the Champions League. How significant a night do you feel it was?
I think it's very significant for the women's game and for Celtic. I mean, these things it's a learning process and it's baby steps, because you don't see a club coming into a tournament and making an immediately strong impression. You know, you've got to kind of get familiar with that level of opponent, and it takes time, and it takes building up a kind of bank of experience that might take 3-4 years, you know, before you really start to push on and maybe realistically aim for the knockout stages. I mean, it seemed like, unlike Joelle, I wasn't able to watch the game. I had to rely on your commentary, Al, so I may have a completely wrong impression of everything that happened, but it did seem like a decent attendance. I think it was nearly 3,000, wasn't it? So that is something else that's kind of building. And listen, we'll get there. It was interesting listening to Joelle talking about kind of missed chances that would normally be taken at domestic level. And I think, you know, that's a thing that we hear a lot about Scottish teams in Europe, isn't it? That, you know, they maybe just kind of rush chances or kind of snatch at chances that they would be able to convert normally, you know. And again, it's just about getting familiar and comfortable at that level.
Well, another game played last night saw Falkirk move to the top of the Championship after they drew 0-0 at home to Livingston. You're talking about attendances, Michael, almost 6,000 at the Falkirk Stadium's a definite feel-good factor out of the momentum surrounding the club. Didn't get the goals that the majority of those fans would have hoped for. You did see that one, I think. So, I mean, was that a result that reflected the game for you?
Yeah, maybe I think Falkirk might feel a little bit hard done by. They had a lot of the second half play. They had a goal that they thought was going to count, but it was disallowed because the ball had gone out of play in the build-up. Something that John McGlynn kind of queried, But yeah, I mean, listen, there's a lot of positivity around Falkirk. We saw it when they played Celtic in the Premier Sports Cup and competed really well. They play good football. Maybe weren't quite at their best in terms of their clinical. Their finishing and so on yesterday, but again, as you say, nearly 6,000 there last night, and they had a great crowd the other week when they played Ayr. Falkirk have always had a decent support that's ready to mobilise behind them, and I think they've shown enough already to suggest that they're going to be there right until the end of the season. It will be quite an interesting championship. I don't think it's one of the strongest championships we've had in recent seasons, but I think it might be one of the most competitive.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. Joelle, it does look like they've carried that league-winning momentum into this season, doesn't it? And albeit they have finally lost the losing record a couple of weeks back against Wraith Rovers, but as Michael says, it does look like, albeit it's still early in the season, but it does look like they're going to have a title challenge again this season.
Yeah, I suggest that way. I think, unlike Michael, I didn't see last night's game, but from what he said, they weren't at their best from a performance level, but that shows the characteristics of a very good team, that you don't play your best, but you can still come away with something. And I definitely agree. I think from a competitive perspective, it will be interesting, and believe it will go right down to the wire. But yeah, I think Falkirk, they've continued that momentum. They obviously have a winning mentality now, win at all costs, and that's probably driven by John McGlynn off the pitch, and the players carry that onto the pitch. So yeah, I think they're showing the characteristics of a very, very good team.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned John McGlynn there. Clearly, the brand of football that his sides have played in recent years at Wraith Rovers and now on to Falkirk is, as Michael says, a real kind of joy to watch. I saw his name was linked with the Hearts vacancy just recently. I'm not sure how likely it is he would go back to Tynecastle, or if that's the move they're thinking of. But are you surprised, Michael, that maybe he's not been linked with more higher profile jobs than Falkirk in recent times?
Yeah, I guess so, because he's got a pretty good and long and established kind of body of work. I think people have quite a lot of respect for John McGlynn and the way his teams play. I mean, when they went to Parkhead, I think there was an expectation that Falkirk would do all right. Not that they would win, because I was going to be asking too much given the gap in resources. But I think there was a general expectation that Falkirk will probably play pretty well and contribute a lot to the match, and they did. Listen, it's taken a while to get back up to the Championship. They're there now, as you say, that they've got that kind of winning momentum that still seems to be going. I don't know. Maybe John McGlynn is just going to be a guy whose best work is going to be in the lower divisions, or if unless he takes Falkirk up. He's had his moments in his career, but I don't know. I'm not sure if John would be an easy sell to a lot of supporters, like Hearts supporters, for example. Yeah. Fans have their ideas of what they want.
It wouldn't be the sexiest appointment in the world.
No, it wouldn't be. Which is a shame for John, because I say his work is impressive. But yeah, listen, I mean, Falkirk fans won't be wanting us rushing him out of the club to anybody else, and let's see if we can get them back into the Premier League.
Yeah, and likewise, Joelle, Livingston, we should mention them because they've actually started the season really well as well, and that's a good result for them. They're 3 points behind Falkirk, 2 behind Ayr, the only undefeated team in the league. they're probably flying under the radar a little bit, which David Martindale will probably quite like. But I think there was a bit of uncertainty about just how they would do this season. But they've started well as well, haven't they?
Yeah, they have indeed. And like you said, have had a consistent start to the season. And everyone's speaking about your Falkirk, your ears, and kind of not really talking up Livingston as much, which, like you said, David Martindale will love. He'll like to do his business quietly, flying under the radar while still getting up in the kind of top 3-4 positions within the league. And a fantastic result for them because, like you said, they had a little bit of transition, a lot of players leaving at the end of last season. However, I feel they recruited well. And recruit experience as well as quality to add to the youthfulness that they had left within their squad. So yeah, I think David Martindale deserves a lot of credit to get to where they are now based on the transitional kind of moments on and off the pitch towards the end of last season.
Finally, we're officially in the international break. The Scotland squad have gathered for the upcoming Nations League matches against Croatia and Portugal. Robbie McCrory and Jack McKenzie, the latest faces to be added to the group, replacing the injured Angus Gunn and Greg Taylor. An incredible amount of injuries, particularly in the defensive positions, Michael. But I suspect that with your Aberdeen hat on, you'll be pretty pleased about the call-up of Jack McKenzie and of course, Nicky Devlin already in the squad. How do you think they'll do at international level if called upon?
Yeah, listen, I think it will be a step up for the two of them. They have both been really strong so far this season, maybe Devlin especially. Devlin gives Aberdeen a kind of attacking option, and the way that Jimmy Tillene has them playing, the fullbacks are important. Not sure if either of them will play in these two games. I mean, it might be that Steve Clarke just gets them in to kind of familiarise them a little bit with the setup. There's also talk, I think, of Kevin Nisbet maybe coming in as well. Yeah. Possibly a doubt over Lawrence Shankland. So he would be. I think the numbers are talking about 13, 14 Scotland players missing from this double header. So if you go through the team, Al, it's still possible to put a pretty strong looking Scotland team together for these games. But we're down to fumes really in terms of the depth of the squad. Yeah,
it is looking tough for Steve Clarke ahead of these games, Joelle, which are clearly they are difficult fixtures even with a full strength squad. Craig Gordon looks to me, especially with Angus Gunn dropping out, almost certain to start these two games, which is quite incredible. I guess if you just look back to the Finland game before the Euros, and then he was of course left out of the squad, to see him back as Scotland number one again, but it just underlines his character and determination, doesn't it?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think that was never in doubt. Craig Gordon. Certainly it looked as if that was potentially a farewell, a last game. But all credit to him. He's went away, worked hard, retaining the number one spot with Hearts. And like you said, it looks like now Angus Gunn has been ruled out, that he will start, given we've got two uncapped goalkeepers in the squad, and John McCracken and Robbie McCrory. So yeah, I think all credit to Craig Gordon, defying his age. But yeah, I think very much so down to the bare bones. But when you do look at the squad, there is experience across the spine of that team and real good quality. And if Nisbet does get the call up, I think I was surprised that he wasn't initially in the squad, given the start that he's had to his Aberdeen career. So if he does get the call up, it'd be good to see him take to the pitch and hopefully get back in amongst the goals for Scotland.
Michael, the performances in the last couple of games were, I think, probably a bit more like what Scotland fans are keen to see, a bit more swashbuckling, if you like, albeit two more defeats. How do you see these two upcoming games going?
I don't know. I hesitate to say that we would take the same again. I mean, if we perform well and contribute a lot and make chances, and there's far more energy and kind of ambition in the performances than there was in the Euros, maybe that'll be okay. But at the same time, if it's another 2 defeats, you're going to 1 win in 16. I mean, that is that's the statistic that we just can't get away from at the moment. And it feels like every time I talk or write about Scotland, you feel obliged to put that in because it completely sets the mood. I think this is a very, very awkward spell for Steve Clarke. It is the consequences of being promoted into company that we're probably out of our depth with a little bit, to be honest. And it's quite feasible that we don't take anything from the next 4 games, which is Croatia away, and then Portugal at Hampden, and then next month we're away to Poland and at home to Croatia. So there's no let up. I mean, John Carver talking yesterday about there may be some pain and hurt to come. Well, fans have had a lot of that in the last year. It's over a year since we've had a competitive win. So it's difficult to really get a handle, I think, on Steve Clarke's job security, frankly, because I think it will be shaped by what happens in the next 4 games, Alan. And I think I saw that the date's come out for the World Cup qualifying draw in December. That'll tell us who we've got next year. That'll shape ticket sales, which are significant for the SFA when they try and sell multi-game packages for Hampden. Also, you've got the Scotland Supporters Club membership renewal this season. That's nearly 40,000 people. That's a lot of money, and the fans' mood towards the manager and towards the team will be important at that point, and that's why these next 4 games are important.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, a lot more on Scotland over the next few days, of course, on the Scottish Football Podcast, but that's all we've got time for this one. My thanks to Michael Grant and Joelle Murray, and thank you for listening. As always, remember, we're here with new episodes of the Scottish Football Podcast bright and early every day, so to make sure you don't miss out, subscribe on BBC Sounds and have push notifications turned on in your phone. Bye for now.
This is the shocking moment English football has been dreading.
My name is Moses Swabu, and I used to be a professional footballer, but then I got in deep with organised crime and became a match fixer operating in the English League.
A match-fixing investigator has highlighted 2 matches he says appear to have suspicious betting patterns.
How honest are you going to be with me?
This is 100%. Join me for Sports Strangest Crimes presents Confessions of a Match Fixer. Listen on BBC Sounds.